Welcome to the Analytics Engineering Podcast, featuring conversations with practitioners inventing the future of analytics engineering. Lauren Anderson, welcome to the Analytics Engineering Podcast. Great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Before we dive into the current day, maybe you could just share with our listeners a little bit about your background and how you came to the role that you're in today.
Yeah, I knew that was going to be the first question. And so I thought about this a lot this morning because, I've had a 20-something year career at this point. I have basically spent my entire career in analytics some way, but my first data job was at a big bank. I won't name it. There's only a few big banks, so you could probably guess. And I worked for the finance org. And I did like compensation planning and administration with
Thrilling.
yeah, right, with a side of sales tracking and analytics. And so I was like part like database analyst, part like customer support for people that made a lot more money than I did. And somehow I met, and I was there for 7.5, 8 years. And towards the end of it, I got into being the owner and creator and almost like business architect for our brand new sales tracking data warehouse. And so at a very young age, kind of got to think about how relational databases should come together for the outcome of both analytics and reporting, so dashboards and whatnot, but also operations, which was paying compensation every month. And it got me super excited about this world of data, and being able to architect pipelines and just kind of the end-to-end flow for like really real world outcomes. And after I did that for about 7.5, 8
Wait.
years.
Before you move on from that, I just want to ask you about this. So I think you and I started our careers in kind of like roughly similar eras, and it was not a glamorous time to be a data person. But like I think to hear what you were just sharing, it seems like you had some level of success in that part of your career, and as did I. It's interesting to think the things like what do you think was it that allowed you to be successful in that era of your career? Because I often think that like the things that allowed me to be successful then are actually not the same things that allow data people to be successful today.
It's a great question. Let me preface it for like what was the situation when I took it over. We ran compensation out of an Access database. Now I'm dating myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I was fairly new to the team. The person that had designed the Access database and ran compensation left. And so what happens whenever anybody leaves? You have to take it over. There's not a whole lot of documentation. And it miraculously worked the first month I had to run it. Month 2 came around and the whole thing broke. And now, granted, you have to give this file to the payroll department by a certain time, on a Friday, if people are going to get their paychecks the week following. And so it was on me to figure out what it was. So we got it fixed. And I swear, I'm going to answer your question. I decided after that time, because it was awful, tears, and oh my God, I hate my job, and I'm going to get fired, and no one's going to get paid. I decided, you know what, there's a better way. And at the time, I decided to create basically a very long SQL series of SQL queries that had inline comments and documentation that had step through check number 1, check number 2, check number 3, and it output into a beautiful file. And that at that time was innovative, right? Because access databases were still very much a thing, especially in finance. And that's what allowed me to have some early success, is that I was willing to just throw it all away, not even, try to figure this thing out, and say, I'm going to improve it, and I'm going to improve it in a way that makes sense to me and the things that I had learned in school, because I was pretty new out of college at this time. Um, and you're right that now maybe part of that can be success, like the ability to learn and to take chances, and to figure out like what's the best thing now, maybe is about the same, but the technology is completely different.
Also, in your story, there was a certain level of like accountability
Oh,
where
yes. Hmm.
uh, I remember very much in the early parts of my career, like um, data people had operating responsibilities. Like um, you were not being called on to create a dashboard to to like facilitate some meeting where maybe somebody would make a decision on it, maybe they wouldn't. Oftentimes you were literally like in the operating flow of a business, and if you
Hmm.
didn't do your thing, some gigantic problem was going to happen, and that meant that you might be pulling all-nighters for
Hmm.
a little while this week.
Hmm.
And I think that that experience is less true in the world of today, and it was there was a certain level of like you know willingness to shoulder the hard things.
It's interesting that you say that. I don't know if I've thought of it that way, but I agree. I think that, or I'm gonna maybe ask you a question. Um, do you think that a possibility for why that is different now is that we've kind of moved beyond like operations?
Yes. Okay. So I literally right before we started recording this podcast, and I don't know, maybe by the time we put this out, I'll have put this out into the wild. But I was writing a roundup issue about how the dominant use case for analytics in the like 90s and 2000s was operations, whereas starting in like 2010, the dominant use cases for analytics have been more product and marketing.
Hmm.
So they're more like optimization as opposed to operations. I don't know. That's my theory.
I wonder if actually like one job has bifurcated into two. And so
Hmm.
you have now like analytics. So and that can range anything to like from KPIs and like company or thing performance. You have kind of your predictive, like I'm going to tell the teacher, and this is and what you do with it, I'm not sure all the time, but at least like we're trying to tell the future. And then you have like your exploratory, like tell me something that I don't already know. And then you have your operations analyst, let's
Hmm.
say, which maybe are still in that
Yeah.
flow.
Yeah.
I chose the first path, and that's when I left the bank and I went into tech. But I think even to my coworkers, or other parts of the company that I work for today, ops analysts, like especially in
Hmm.
finance, sales, marketing, all of that very much still exists.
Okay. So you moved out of the bank. You moved in. Was ModCloth your first tech
No,
job?
no. TripIt, the travel
Okay.
app, was my first tech job. So, living in San Francisco, everybody's in tech. Like, why am I not in tech? And so I decided that it was time for me to kind of figure that out. So after it was about 8 years in finance, um, running compensation plans, and doing sales analysis. Now, granted, I have a very soft spot for sales data in general. It makes me excited. Um, which, if data is going to make you excited, sure, like pipeline and sales and hard dollars, and that I enjoy that. I decided let's try this tech thing. So I went to work for TripIt, so travel app. It had just been purchased, and and that was super fun because it's really fun to dig into people's travel habits. You know, planes and trains and automobiles and hotel affiliations and things like that. You really get to the like the psyche of not just like the business traveler, but you know, we actually bifurcated everything into business and pleasure. And so that was a lot of fun. And I did a lot of marketing work. So that was where I kind of like talking about those two different ways that, you know, of data people. That's when I got into like the marketing optimizations and a bit into product and you know, certainly like web analytics.
And so, not that long after you made that transition, you found yourself at Okta, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was, you know, there was a couple of, you know, 1 year. Yeah, yeah. I think there was two more jobs. There was ModCloth after that, and then an ad tech startup, and then Okta. Yes, so maybe 2 years.
And so I know that you divided up your time at Okta into two separate stints, but what's been 8 years, 9 years?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is funny
Um,
because like it's the this second go round. It's been just over two.
okay.
Hmm.
Um, how would you characterize the things that you've done at while at Okta?
Yeah. So preface it with, you know, Okta was the first company that I worked for where it was like truly like B2B.
Mm,
Everything else had some kind of like customer or consumer element to the data that I was working with. And I actually had a lot of trepidation about that. I was very aware that I was moving into kind of a different type of data, different type of analytics. And what I found very quickly is like B2B is like my sweet spot. Like I need like that's where I'm
mm.
always going to be. Um, I love I love the idea of you know, customer data as a business as an entity, and then how you know those business users that are part of that customer interact day to day with you know our products and features. I'll never go back, honestly. It's like this is it. This is it for me.
I've never
Um,
heard anyone say that before.
really?
I actually uh I would say that probably the most fun I've had doing data was in the prosumer space when I was at Squarespace, because you get
Mm,
large N sample sizes in a way that you
yeah.
don't get if you're a pure enterprise company. Anyway, I think your analytical methods change a lot based on like how large your data set is.
It could be, and I do. I mean, maybe it's just me thinking, and it's just my experiences, right? I find at least Okta data is very complex. We have a lot of
Mm.
products, we have a lot of features, we have a lot of different types of use cases because Okta is so highly configurable. There is no like set way, even a few set ways. You know, and especially our larger customers look very different when you look under the hood in data. And to me, that's really exciting. I think when you are, and I'm not knocking retail data or anything like that. But when you look at like people interacting on a website and then like clicking a buy, you know, a buy button, you know, over and over, like that flow looks really this it's the same. It's similar. You know, yes, you can get into maybe like user habits, but you're gonna find, you know, X amount of users that look exactly the same way. And so I think maybe what it is that I like the variety, if you
Yeah.
will.
What is your current role in Okta?
Yep. So I lead our enterprise data platform engineering and architecture function. So for you know all of our enterprise data needs, you know people using data to make you know business decisions. That's our purview. And I own the ingestion into our data warehouse. I own the transformations, and then I also own the delivery to that. So whether that's you know dashboards or uh, moving data to third-party applications or other data stores or you know other homegrown applications. So it's exciting. I love it.
One of the things that I've, I and our team have spent a lot of time with you folks on over the last, I don't know, year or so, and I know that Pooja on your is Pooja on your team?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep, she's great.
spoke at Coalesce
Mhm.
about was the the way that I would put it is your data operating model, the way that you operationalize data, both like within your organization, but then how you help Okta at large to operationalize data, which is, a maybe kind of a vague term, but I think about it as just like, um, what are the different humans and their roles? How do they interact together? What are the tools that they use to facilitate those workflows? All of that. How would you describe um, Okta's data operating model?
I think it's ever evolving. I think one way that we look a little different is that we're a security first company, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we are very conservative when it comes to who has access to do what or even to look at what.
Okay,
And so,
I want to get there, and but before you get there, just can you tell us some basic stuff, like how many people on the like kind of central data function? How do you have relationships with the kind
yeah,
of business functions? All of
yeah,
that basic
yeah,
stuff, and then we can get
yeah.
to the interesting stuff.
I will give you my spiel. So between data engineering, which is my side, and then the analytics, data science function, we are about almost 50 people. So we're small, we're tiny actually,
Yeah,
and we
in
support
a
every business.
company of what, thousands of employees?
Yes, yeah, like somewhere south of 7,000. So
Okay,
we're not even yeah. Um, and we support every business unit in some way. Now, granted, it is different. Our operating models are different with each and every business unit. We certainly tailor needs to what other teams want. So it spans the entire maturity curve. So there are some teams that just serve on our platform. So they have maybe their own analytics functions. We help land the data. They do all their transformations. They do their reporting and their dashboard and their analytics. Great. That's I'd say like
and they
one
use
side of it.
tools that you have procured
We
and set up for
own,
them.
yes, we own the platform. So like if I'll plug this for you. So like we have Fivetran. So like we manage Fivetran, but they can create their own connectors.
Mm,
They can do their transformations with DBT that but we own that implementation. And then they're also then creating dashboards on Tableau, which we also own. So
okay,
so there's a separate role and governance structure that looks different than our team. Maybe we're watching them a little bit more. Maybe like they don't have the super admin access we do. We're not they're not setting up like actual roles, but they can put people into those roles that we have set up.
okay. So
So
that's kind of like one
that's
model. That's
one,
like
yeah, that's like how we
maybe
would love everybody to operate, at some point. Like, but those teams have hired those positions, and then we partner with those analysts, analytics engineers. Then there's kind of the other side where we have a very white glove experience with people. And so, there's a life cycle that you have to use data to make decisions. And so it kind of starts with, hey, what's the question? So great, like we have questions about. From there you go to, does something already exist? We have a huge drop off right there because there's a lot of people that don't even know how to like find if something already exists. So that's when they're going to reach out to the team, and then we either point them to that thing that already exists, or we say, hey, like there's something here, like let's talk. And then from there, we do the requirement gathering, we do the data work, we build the thing, whatever it is. And then I even say in a lot of situations, we're also helping to interpret results, and then validating said decision. We do everything all the way up to like the end of life of said thing of the data product. And that is, that's another model that we do. And it's a super valid model. I think like the sweet spot is to be somewhere in the middle, right? To be able to get some part of the way. I personally would love people to start doing, more people start doing their own data transformations. We have this idea of our enterprise pipelines. So those are the ones that like are running our company level performance, like the things that like have to be like really gold standard, like stamped enterprise. If you're going to talk about them in the public, they're, that they are stamped and come from our team. They're monitored, um, they're governed. But there's all this other work that other people should be doing, and then we offer like that path to production. Like this thing works, we now want to start using it in more places. Then that's when we should come in and say, okay, then we're gonna put our governance on top.
I know that obviously Okta is well known for identity, for security, and as you alluded to before, certainly that's going to have some implications for the way that you do data. But what I would be very interested to not talk about that at a high level, a strategic, like, oh, we prioritize things differently, or we decide, we make different decisions, but more to like, how do you actually operationalize that? Does it slow you down? Do you use different tools? Are you really just like being tighter about how you assign access permissions inside of your data platform? Like, how do you actually make it work?
um I'm not sure that we have gotten to the point where it's like it's perfect.
Sure.
I do think that you say slow us down. Like there's a balance, right? Like of
Yeah.
course, being stringent on security and making sure that like we have the right roles and like the governance policies, and like that is going to slow us down. I think the best that we can do, or what we strive for, is that we have repeatable frameworks. So that if we are onboarding a new data source, or if there's
Hmm.
new data, like a new data sort, like Tableau, like a new report, and it needs like its own kind of transformed data set, that like there's a repeatable framework there. That's the best that we can do, because we can have like the built-in governance and security on top of that.
Hmm.
Is it perfect? No.
What?
um,
So can you walk me through one of these? Like, if you mentioned before that kind of your embedded, or I guess federated teams can set up new Fivetran integrations. When you is there like a an internal playbook of like, okay, you want to set up a Fivetran integration? Cool. Here's how you need to go think about the security and permissions for that.
We do that for them. So it's like, so
Okay.
we say, hey, like I'm gonna set up this, Workday connector. Let's just say it's like, okay, then we help through the security review, because that's the other
Mm,
part of this. Anytime you are integrating anything, any two applications, we have to have our security team has to sign off on. They have to look at it and sign
mm,
off. So that's number one. So that's even any time that we want to bring a new data source into the data warehouse, like our third party risk has to look at it. So and that's classifying the data, understanding what it is. Is there PII? Is that does anything need to be masked? Are you leaving things out? Like
mm.
it's all of that. Once we help the team do that. There's, if people do it once or twice, they kind of know, just go directly to third party risk. You don't need us. We're kept in the loop. We know when you're turning it on. Yes, we're going to help you monitor it. That type of flow happens.
And do you feel
um,
like that process is smooth enough where like it happens in kind of like some predictable time frame and people
it
can work
has
it into their
gotten
schedules?
so much better over, I would
Yeah.
say, even the last couple of years. And I think it's we as a company have gotten more succinct on our like the data classification um types, and being able to identify them for our third party risk. So that isn't necessarily our business tags, and like how we like think about you know uh like the date, like the non-security side, I guess, maybe of like business data. But from a security perspective, yes, it's what could have taken a couple of weeks and a lot of back and forth on our team, of just like having to like make security feel comfortable that we're not like giving the keys of the to the kingdom, like to some rando person. It has gotten better now. It's days instead of
Yeah.
instead of
That's
what.
great. That is a real demonstration of uh, like a commitment to doing a hard thing well. Because my guess is that basically every company that goes down the hard path of taking that stuff seriously, initially they're going to have the same experience that you have had, which is to say, like, it's going to suck at first, and everyone's going to be irritated at the process, and they're going to think like, well, why do I have to do this at all? I don't want to do it. And the only thing that you can do is, like, both at the same time, like, stick to it, but then also, like, make sure that everybody has realistic expectations. Like, hey, security team, like, it's not actually going to be feasible to wait for 3 weeks. We need to do better, and et cetera. Like, just
Yeah,
iterate your way through
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's I'm not gonna. It's not all roses and hearts for sure. Like it takes time, but I would say that one of the kind of major shifts I've seen, not just on my team, but I think just in the company as a whole over the last couple of years, is that like we truly all believe that we are security practitioners. Every single one of us, every employee
Hmm.
at Okta is a security practitioner. And I think when you lead with that, when you lead with that understanding, then one, we're going to do things right the first time around. We're not going to cut any corners. Nobody is, right? And I have trust in what you're doing on my platform because you're a security practitioner just like I am. And then the security team is saying the same thing. I know you're not bringing me, you're not like suggesting we do something that I might have to give pause to and say, hey, you haven't thought this through at all, because you have.
In order to facilitate all of this, are there tools that you folks use that might not be widely known in the industry? Or are you just, like, doing a really good job of setting column masking policies and
That the latter.
yeah? Oh,
Yeah,
huh.
yeah. No, I mean, I think I believe that as we become, more foundational to AI use cases, then that will change. I think we will need something, and that's from like data classification, masking, all of that. Like we're doing it all, in the data warehouse. So like using Snowflake and whatnot. Um, the security team itself has their kind of defensive logs and things and tools um, that they use to ensure that there are no bad actors. Uh, and then there's probably that gap in the middle of just kind of like we're creating retention policies and classification policies and data readiness for use, that policies are living in one place, and I think like our implementation of said policies are kind of where it makes sense at this moment.
Yeah.
But we
And
have we there's room there for sure.
if you're a user of the platform, you're a business analyst or analytics engineer, do you have to know about this stuff, or is it all kind of transparent to you, hopefully?
I don't know how transparent it is. I think that um, you are not expected to know it all, and let's say as an analytics engineer, say that uh, you're doing a set of transformations. We do have frameworks in place that says like here is how you create a DBT model, and here's like the minimum level of things like of tests and things like that you need to have in place. And then there is, subject matter, resources, puja, to then say, hey, let me help you make sure that you have everything done the way that we expect. But again, like this is like we have room for improvement there as well. I mean, luckily I have, 100% trust that like everybody's going to ask the questions if they're unsure. And then we have people there that are there to help guide forward.
I want to pivot with you a little bit to AI and agents. um,
Mhm.
because um, I think that increasingly a lot of the technology is there. And one of the main things that is, um, a rate limiter on adoption is security policies and enforcement and all of this stuff. And but before we get into that part of it, I'm just curious to do a gut check with you. My belief is that sometime over the next 12 to 24 months, agents will uh, write more analytical queries than humans will. Um, do you agree with that?
Ye Yes, yes. In the macro, yes. In my micro, um, maybe not 12 months, but definitely, in the 24 to 36. I think we're uber careful
Yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
agents in general.
If you're a listener and that is not your worldview, um, that maybe that's something that I should spend some time on in the future, because I just see like evidence of this all around me all the time. Um, but I don't want to get this conversation bogged down in like why agents are the future. Um, the as you think about your own path to this future, how do you think about uh, whether it's like um, MCP and the right governance model on top of MCP, or just more generally, how are you thinking about making sure the right agents have access to the right data so that good stuff happens?
Yeah. It's like what I'm spending basically my entire life on thinking about right now because
That's
we
great
are.
because you know a lot more about this than I do. Then tell me what you're thinking about.
So, I mean, because I think I mean, micro and macro are on the precipice of knowing that we need to do something, right? And then we need to make data available to agents, and we need to do it in a way that is going to be safe. So, the safe, ethical use of AI, right? Add the fact that we're a security company on top of that, and I think times that by 1,000. So the way that I am thinking about this is that um, it makes sense that there is one centralized, maybe it's not one, maybe it's a few centralized data stores that has anything that would be available for AI use. Great. So agents are only coming to one place. Like you're not doing necessarily like app to app integrations. And like sometimes you will have to, but and other times not. And the
So
reason for that,
it's like, don't take your ChatGPT Enterprise subscription and plug it straight into Google Drive and
correct.
let it rip. Just like know that you need to have an enterprise data strategy, and your agents plug into that.
Because I 100% believe that your governance model, you really can only do like you really not could. You should really have your governance model in one place. Like just run your governance once. And
Yep,
and and
it's hard enough to
and
do
so
once.
correct. And so your policies and your implementation and your tracking and your logging and all of that is happening on a central plane. Now, granted, I don't know how this is going to work just yet, but this is like at least like high level how I see this in my life. So you have one kind of, I'm calling it like a governance control plane. I mean, is there a tool out there that even does that? I don't know. That's your roles and your policies for your users, because that's important. But also you need to have policies and roles for your data too. And so
Mm.
those two things have to meet somewhere in the middle. And you can't do that in 800 different places. You do that in one place. I don't even know if that, like, is this possible? I don't know. I also think that like there's an idea of like the semantic layer as well. And I think a lot about that because that's where I think we're struggling with the most right now is to like, how do we make creating semantic views as easy and automated as possible? For us right now, they're very manual.
Hmm.
How does that, like, do you inform on your governance policies and implementation, like within your semantic layer? Maybe. I don't know. You onboard data. That data has policies. That policy is controlled on the governance plane. And then it goes and like informs on data.
The thing that I always come back to when people talk about how complex it is to make sure that the right agents have access to the right data is that
Mm.
the whole term agent is like it comes from agency. It's and it's supposed to be at least a little bit analogous to a human. So like it's it's uh it's doing kind of the same things that a human would do, and we've hopefully already we have the technology that we need to make sure that the right humans have access to the right data. So why is the problem of agents any more complex than the problem of humans? Can't we just make sure that they have the right user level access, that the role mappings are done correctly, and et cetera, et cetera?
I think where that starts to break down a little bit is when you get into complex use cases like, I have a data store, which is, say, for example, like conversational intelligence, sales people or like people like having like customer conversations. And some of that could be, pretty confidential data.
Hmm.
If you human say, okay, or agent, like I'm using, we'll just say it's Gong. I'm using Gong data to be able to like do this thing. That Gong data should really only be like the Gong data that you user that is asking that agent to do things. It's only that data that that user has access to. Does that make sense? And so like, I don't know if I'm explaining it well enough. It seems so succinct in my head, but maybe I'm
So
having a hard time.
something about the access patterns that agents need are different, or
Are
maybe the
different.
data.
It's like I think, yeah, I think it's both are different based on who is on the other end asking that agent to do something.
It's like row level security to the extreme.
In a way, right?
Uh, because
Because
probably if you have access to like do aggregations on top of the orders table, then everybody who has access to do that probably has about the same level of access. But certainly, uh, Gong data would be rich enough that if it wasn't your conversation, maybe you should be able to aggregate over it, but you shouldn't necessarily be able to like know the contents of every single conversation at an AI
and
level.
I think it's those aggregations that then also exist in this data store that is open for, for consumption across the board. Whether it's like, being comfortable with some kind of anonymization or aggregation to say like, we'll allow you to see trends, but you're not going to be able to see the detail. Maybe that's a thing.
You almost need to like limit the functions that can be called on top of big, unstructured data objects. Um, so like, you could imagine counting a thing, but not necessarily like summarizing a thing, or like asking specific questions on top of it. Uh, that is when agents start to be qualitatively different than humans.
To plug Okta's identity product for a second, Okta Secures AI is a real thing, where we are looking at a separate identity pattern to secure an agent.
Hmm.
And it is in theory, parts of like our cross application, authentication because an agent is doing, this over, multiple places. But it's like, it is a thing that needs to be solved. And maybe it can be solved by people smarter than me.
How does this manifest in the MCP world. Do you folks use any MCP tools internally? Are you provisioning them via any particular method? How does this work internally?
We are early. Yes, we are building, and our use cases are, I think they're the common ones that are out there. Support, maybe, helping, identify, areas of opportunity, things like that. But again, we are we are I believe, if we have this conversation in 6 months,
Mm.
it will be a very different conversation. I think that things are changing. We're making a lot of progress very, very quickly. Um, right now, I'm feeling confident that it's happening, though maybe nothing is in production as of yet.
As you are thinking about this stuff, what is your mental model for how data engineers and analytics engineers should participate? My guess is that uh, the right model here is not, well, of course, the data team builds all agents for everyone, um, but maybe there is more to do than just, yeah, you want the data, there it is.
Yeah.
How are you
Yes.
thinking about it?
Um, I think for analytics engineers, I think there's a huge, exciting opportunity for specifically analytics engineers, because they sit, between the business and, the analytics side of things and, engineering. They have the biggest, um, understanding of the data and the business need or outcome. And to me, that screams semantic layer.
Hmm.
And so we even right now have an analytics engineer role. Oh, should I say this? Come apply. That is really that will own, our semantic layer, which I think is really exciting. And that's the tooling, that's, any vendor choices, that's the actual like onboarding of business cases, that's, everything from like the technical side of things to like the, common language that sometimes we need to give it so it knows what to do. For the data engineer, yeah, I think beyond here's the data, I think it is really about the optimizations, making sure that, said agent wants this thing, having enough of a purview to say like, hey, this agent is doing something really similar to this agent, is doing something really similar to this agent. Like, let's make sure that we're optimizing for consistency and in scale. I think data engineers will have kind of the best purview over that. And then too, we want people to be creating their own as well. So like having a place that people can, trust, that we have it all figured out, but behind the scenes around governance and security and whatnot. That as they're using things or creating things, they're not
Do you
inadvertently going to do something that they shouldn't.
do you imagine a role, um, similar to how you folks have uh, uh, pushed for adoption of DBT across the entire organization, where there's your team will have a suggested agentic development platform, and you will help enable that across the organization?
Yeah, I do. I think it's in partnership for sure. So it's in partnership with engineering services, with shared services, and then us, the data. I don't think we can do it. I don't think we can do it alone. But I do. The North Star is that, the team is helping to build agents, but that we also are enabling a platform where other people can develop their own
Yeah.
agents.
Are you getting most pull for agents from the business or from engineering?
The business.
Oh, okay. Um, so if you were to think right now about uh, agentic development platforms, you're skewing towards the N8N version of the world and not the LangChain.
Yes, but that also is like that's just my
That's your view of the
that's my
yeah
purview of being enterprise data, and
yeah
our most of our stakeholders are the business
the
that
business.
are,
Yep.
yes. There is a whole other team that, yes. So if you were to ask that question of somebody else, they would say, engineering for sure. But I think that in partnership, we're trying to build, a central platform that can support both.
Because you got to solve the governance once. I
That's what
heard
I'm hoping. Yeah, that's central governance.
we all bring our existing mental models, and as you and I were talking about at the beginning of this episode, we have a couple decades of existing detritus floating around up there in the old brain, um, and we in a new paradigm, you kind of bring these assumptions whether or not they're productive. And one of the things that I have started to try to think more about is like what assumptions that I bring that I don't even realize that I'm bringing are unproductive. And one of the things that I found out in a conversation recently, and I have to, before I like say names or companies or anything, I have to get this cleared. But was that a lot of the use cases for the quote unquote analyst agent are actually not similar to questions that data analysts get asked today. They're actually much simpler. We oftentimes data analysts are like very precious about uh, their level of correctness and
Hmm.
the level of sophistication for their analytical methods and all of this stuff. And a lot of times, the people who are underserved by the current model, they just like want to get a list of top 50 customers in New York. It's like super basic, and no one ever prioritizes that because they're just
Yeah,
like, I don't know,
yeah,
figure out another way to do it.
yeah.
Um, do you have any pre-existing notions that you think maybe don't translate into this new world?
I will say I was having a conversation this morning with our VP of AI strategy, and talking about next year's roadmap, right? And she threw out a thing of like, couldn't we move faster if we just did this thing? And I had to pause and say, I'm trying to mentally poke holes in the idea of like why it's not possible or why it would be a bad idea. And I couldn't. Like it was a really valid like possibility for us to like go and at least test. And it made me realize that I am stuck thinking about this AI world um, as a relational database.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that like, and maybe it doesn't need to be, at least like with structured data. Unstructured, okay, fine, but like at least it doesn't need to be. And so like I like, this was just this morning, so like I need to process this
Mm-hmm.
and and come up with the like, why do I feel this way? And I think it's partially because that's what I know. And it's gotten me this far in life, but that it also like, you always kind of sit back and um you always think about it like that, you try to solve the problem with the thing that has worked time and time and time again. And I think for me, I need to understand like, do I do I have some work to do around kind of breaking that notion that like everything, like all structured data needs to be, in a really well designed model in order for it to work. Because now I'm thinking my hunch is maybe no.
These kind of simpler questions that this one company has been seeing a lot more of in their kind of internal analyst agent, you realize that a lot of them don't need um, don't need complex joins.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
don't need a lot of the more complicated things that we've learned to do in the past because we're answering these like very pristine, well-governed questions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm very interested to get agents deployed to prod more widely so that we can start observing,
Yeah.
their behavior in practice.
100%. And I agree with you that the questions that or even like the AI use cases that we're starting to see are not like the uber mature ones. Like you're right. Like people are asking of like, I want to know who my top 50 customers are, like something like that. I think what what I have in my head is like why ask the questions that are already being answered for me today by this team over here? So like what are the things that I feel comfortable, like I believe that when I get the answer back, I'm going to be able to look at it and be like, that seems right. Or no, I don't think that's right. I'm
Yes.
not going to trust it. Whereas they like the heavier stuff, they're going to leave to quote unquote the professionals.
Yes. What questions can you be okay with a 95%
Yeah.
accuracy rate?
Yeah. Yeah. Or that you can trust without having to go and ask somebody,
Yes.
hey, is this right?
Yeah.
But I mean, we'll evolve 100%. Like we'll get more mature. But I think I agree with you. And the most important thing that we need to do right now is start somewhere.
Lauren, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for joining me.
This was fun. Thank you for having me.